Excellent. Like I said, this is going to be a great fireside chat. I'd like to introduce Michael Casey, Michael Casey, Brian Steele, and Joe Lubin to the stage for a wonderful discussion around reflections and the road ahead. So take it away, Michael.
Thanks, Daniela. Yep, we hear me? Good, fantastic. Okay. Hi, so I'm Michael Casey. I'm currently wearing a hat that's the chairman of the Advanced AI Society, which is an association of builders, some of whom are in the room here, building what we call proof of control technologies for the age of AI. But many of you may know me from my journalism past. I've read a few books about this, and I was at the Wall Street Journal early on, spent some time at MIT, and then I ended up at CoinDesk for a few years until this new thing where I was the chief content officer and ran Consensys, all of which is relevant. I don't usually do the big bio beforehand, but I actually myself came to the very first Hyperledger meeting, as it was then called, in these very offices 10 years ago when IBM stood up and announced Fabric, and it was a big sort of big announcement right at the very beginning there, and have watched the journey that Hyperledger and then now LFD Decentralized Trust has been on ever since, and it's been a really interesting one, and I think it's going to be quite interesting indeed to have these two gentlemen reflect on that journey and then on what the road ahead looks like, because they both come from quite different perspectives on what this is all about. And in some respects, it is the kind of meeting of minds between, the TradFi world that Brian represents and the, upstart crypto blockchain world that Joe represents. And it's how these
still upstart?
Yes, you're still upstart. I think, not to me, because I'm 10 years and 12 years in crypto as I've been, it's like 30 years.
May we always be upstarts.
Yes, may we always be. But I think that gives you a way to frame how, the resolution of those challenges, the tensions that end up finding the solution is what's going on here. And we'll kind of go with that, I think. But why don't we start with maybe both of you can just sort of talk about those early days and, what led you to get involved with this organization? I mean, I don't know if, Brian, you were there at the time, but you can maybe speak for what DTC was doing. But yeah, Joe, why don't you start? Yeah,
sure. Maybe I experienced more of the tension than Brian did back then. It all comes down to trust, and from our perspective, decentralized trust. The world is in a very complicated situation right now. Economically, there's a lot of debt in the system. Geopolitically, there's a lot of tension. And it feels new, that this level of tension, but it's been building up for a long time. There was loss of trust in centralized institutions going back a few decades. With that loss of trust, there were people who reflected on it and tried to come up with different, better forms of trust. And DTCC itself has been all about evolving better forms of trust. In 2008, 2009, Satoshi Nakamoto invented the most profound form of trust, decentralized trust, and showed us how to operationalize it in the form of Bitcoin. Vitalik came along and showed us, there were a bunch of protocols that were already bringing decentralized trust to a wider range of applications. And Vitalik, in his white paper, articulated a very powerful instantiation of that idea, and so it gained some traction. And so I think we've been on the same team all along. We've been on the same team as regulators all along and law enforcement all along. We're all just trying to build better systems. Our friends in the Bitcoin ecosystem, they were more about financial things, more about crypto anarchy. The people in the Ethereum ecosystem were more software developers building platforms so that other people can build solutions to problems that they saw in the world. And so there was a lot of trust early on. We joined the Hyperledger Foundation. In parallel, we helped found the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and this was all about taking this profound new form of trust that we were so excited about and trying to share it with the world because at least in the Ethereum ecosystem, we felt like, hey, this should be applied to everything. We should do whatever we can to get the message out and to enable all of the systems of the world to experience healthy forms of disintermediation and build better systems on better foundations.
That's a great way to start here because I think, Brian, I watched the DTCC's early forays into this. Rob Palatnik was the champion at the time, and it did seem as if there was enthusiasm to move forward and to recognize that this was a radical different thing. But you have at the same time these deep-seated, long-lasting obligations under a different trust architecture with the TradFi guys, and so it did seem like there was you were pushing up against challenges at that point, and it wasn't quite as easy as just taking everything that Joe was talking about and saying, "Hey, we'll just move over to this new public blockchain structure."
It sounded good when Joe said it, though.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, but so if you live in a world, that is founded on centralized trust infrastructure, it's really hard to wrap your head around the idea that there's this bottom-up form of trust on this network of volunteer processors. So,
yes. No, I think it's fair. And, Michael, I think it raises a really good point. And just to build on what Joe said before, this firm is founded on trust. The financial services in the United States, at least, if not beyond, relies on us and trusts in us to provide services and products that enable the financial services market in the United States. The U.S. equities markets don't open if DTC is not open. It's that type of trust. We have the large majority, if not the entirety, of the U.S. equities market that we custody today, which is over $100 trillion of assets, that is, we're trusted upon for that level of responsibility. Now, as you said, we've been involved for over a decade, or I think just past a decade now, right? Because I think we talked about earlier, it was sort of January of 2016. And it was Rob Palatnik, and now it's John Powell. And I think, our goal is in so many ways, we have an obligation. What is DTCC? Well, it's really the ledger for the industry in so many ways, right? And so we have, as technology evolves, as there's an opportunity for us to think differently about the products and services that we offer to the market, and to be able to provide a level of, democratization to our clients, and to find better ways to operate what we do today. It's incumbent upon us to do that. And in many ways, the work that we're doing now, which hopefully we'll talk about in a little bit, in some ways, it's on a path to disrupting ourselves. The role that we play in the future is going to evolve innately.
Well, Daniel in that meeting was reminding us that Rob used to say that we need to disrupt ourselves, right? Yeah. That's and there's almost an obligation to do that, because if you don't, you'll be beaten by technology. But at the same time, you've got to balance that with the fact that you have these pre-existing obligations to the old world, right? So,
yes.
And laws,
absolutely.
Laws and regulations. Yes.
Well, we'll get into that, because that's obviously one of the things that has changed, or at least we think is changing, and is really having a big impact. But I mean, how does dealing with your member institutions and the companies, the banks and all the other institutions you deal with as you go through this process?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the work that we're doing now to help, we think about it as enabling our clients' digital assets journey, not disrupting the existing actors in the ecosystem. What does that mean? Well, we're on a path to enable the tokenization of the $100 trillion of assets that we hold at DTC. and we will integrate with various L1 networks. We won't be aligned to any one single L1 network. We will enable the tokens to live in wallets of our clients' choices, or wallets of the clients of their clients' wallets, and enable activity to occur on any one of those L1s that we integrate with. And so in many ways, you take the sheer breadth of what DTCC covers today, and you allow that to operate in token form and to enable the existing networks that exist in bringing together DeFi and TradFi. Now, that I think in many ways, as we have many conversations with our clients as how they should think about this in the future, how they should think about what role they play and how should they be enabling this for their clients. There's a lot of questions, and I think what role they want to play in the future, and what are others doing, and what are the motivations of the DeFi community versus the TradFi community. But I think overall, it's been an incredibly positive sentiment that we've received from both DeFi and TradFi. And as we talked about before, just in sort of our breakout just a few minutes ago, we're seeing interest from the DeFi community to be enabled with the tokenization service that I just talked about, either being a direct member and considering to be a direct member, some of which already are a direct member of DTC, but equally enabled by the services of the existing 300 or so direct participants of DTC that can leverage the service today. So, we look at ourselves as kind of bridging the two worlds and not limiting to the existing actors in the TradFi ecosystem.
Well, we talked a little bit about TradFi versus DeFi and these separate communities being something that's supposedly in the future disappears, that it just becomes Fi, but all in, that this is the way that it goes. But Joe, I mean, you were talking there as well, so we keep referring back to our previous conversation. Sometimes one of those things like, make sure we get that conversation in the green room here, because it was great, about the parallels between, MEV and the front-running challenges that you had, that you're trying to deal with within, the Ethereum blockchain, and how that has its parallels to problems that the DTCC and others have had to deal with over the years, regulators as well. And that struck me as just an example of the ways in which these worlds seem so different, but in reality there are very strong parallels, and you can start to have and break down the conversations and start talking about exactly the same thing, but in a very different framework.
Yeah, so there's a lot of complementarity. There's a lot of opportunity. I think it's going to go very well and very smoothly. I think it's going to be great for people on the decentralized protocol side, because we've been laboring under quite a cloud of uncertainty in the United States of America for a little while, and things are much better now. So we can build in rational ways, and having securities available in a convenient form on chain so that they can participate in appropriate ways in decentralized finance. We were talking about collateral before. That's an easy, powerful way for assets to establish a presence and be really valuable in a decentralized context. I think it's going to be very smooth for traditional finance also, because in meetings that we've had, first of all, the DTCC technical team focusing on tokenization is outstanding, and a lot of trust in the approach that is being taken. I think it's, for traditional firms, I think it's going to feel very comfortable, where my interpretation is that DTCC has an organization, seeding company. There's a database, all the equities held in street name here. There's a database, and there's sharing of information between this database and Robinhood's database and Schwab's database, et cetera. So a bunch of private databases, and then private user interfaces to those databases. And so we're going to see that structure mirrored in the decentralized protocol ecosystem, where there'll be a handful of public databases, Ethereum, Canton, others, and there will be dematerialization of equities, into token form, placed on different databases based on different requests, and then wallets like our MetaMask and other wallets will be the user interfaces, or maybe there'll be specific other user interfaces to these public databases. And so I think it's going to feel very comfortable for traditional finance organizations to get up to speed on the technology, and really it's the same system. It's just a slightly upgraded technological implementation, and the opportunities that it opens up will be staggering.
Yeah, and I think, just to build on what Joe was saying, and Michael, I don't know if this is the healthy tension you were looking for, but I'm agreeing with a lot of what Joe says. So
there was a lot of tension in the past. We can go back to the past.
No, I think the regulatory clarity that we received over the last year, and presumably will receive in the next 12 months or 18 months, I think has brought a lot of those from the sidelines to the table, and in particular institutional finance, right? I think, we received a no action letter from the SEC just before the holiday break, which was a nice little present, and that has been, has given us a tremendous amount of inbounds from clients to engage in a way that's meaningful.
It's almost I thought that was really interesting, the way that the announcement was framed around the no action letter. It was like everything was ready to go. We're launching this thing. We just needed the no action letter.
Yes, exactly. So we've been working sort of on the sidelines, with the anticipation that this was coming, because it does give legal certainty, or regulatory certainty, I should say, to the work that we're doing, which is to create this tokenization service. Now, I think the other benefit as well is we're doing so in sort of a regulatory and compliant way, meaning we're creating compliant aware tokens that allow our clients and our clients' clients to tokenize activity, particularly equities, and to be put into wallets. But how do we keep the same KYC and AML perimeter? Like, are we creating bearer instruments? No, we're not. We're creating the same KYC and AML perimeter that regulators are comfortable with that will exist today as it does in the future, meaning you can transfer between wallets as long as those wallets are registered through the service that we are creating.
I think, Joe, that was actually one of the things.
Let me jump on that.
In, please.
TradFi and DeFi are merging, and it's going to happen very rapidly. There were a series of dominoes that knocked each other over, that opened up a great era for our ecosystem and for the convergence. So there was a shift in power in the United States. The SEC transformed from the Gensler administration to the Atkins administration. During that period, stablecoins were starting to get very interesting to a lot of organizations, grow in the size of asset, total asset. Genius Act came along, and suddenly the banks were starting to panic. So the big banks were not really starting to panic, but the medium-sized regional banks were wondering if they're going to lose all of their deposits to these stable coins. SWIFT recognized that concern, and SWIFT decided to try to formulate a response. So we were there at the right place at the right time, and we helped SWIFT brainstorm, and we were asked to put together a prototype of a Swift ledger, which we've done, and that project is going to proceed in various different stages. And Javier Tasso Perez announced this breakthrough project at Sibos in Frankfurt a few months ago, and suddenly it was okay. It was acceptable. Everybody had permission to talk about TradFi and DeFi together. Before, the two rails should not cross, or there be dragons. But now everybody was given permission. The big banks were told. Everybody said thank you. We really needed this to happen, and so it's been moving really fast from there.
But I'll say this, like, some of my best friends are Bitcoiners, but some of the Bitcoin community would not have been the one to be able to move this forward, right? Because it was an Ethereum structure, or different, as you said, like the builders and so forth. You created the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance, which in itself, had a private blockchain framing for it, and as much as it was always built with the knowledge that the public blockchain was the underlying root of trust in all this, to me that seemed to create opportunities for now KYC to be dealt with for all the various compliance needs and so forth. And so it's just interesting to think about how these things come together and requiring give and take on both sides, right?
Yeah. So we did, Consensys did a lot of work on enterprise blockchain, private permission blockchain systems, consortium systems. The Hyperledger Foundation and the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance were all about that. A few years into that, there were a lot of projects tried and essentially failed because there are good reasons and there will be lots of reasons to have sufficient trust. But it wasn't working out in those early contexts. And so some of us who were a little cheeky basically declared enterprise blockchain dead, but also suggested long live enterprise blockchain because we had this roll-up centric roadmap in the Ethereum ecosystem, and that was an appropriate architecture to have a sufficiently decentralized layer 2 blockchain system that could have lots of different forms and subserve lots of different use cases. But if it was structured properly, it would inherit the full trust guarantees of the rigorously decentralized Ethereum network and be able to interoperate with anything on the metropolitan Ethereum ecosystem.
Right. So we've come to the latter part of this conversation now, and as I said, like 10 years, and despite some of the challenges maybe over the first 8 or so, and there's some of these differences and everything, we worked things out, regulatory environment improved, and there's been this explosion of activity. Now we're set, right? Because nothing's going to change in the next 10 years. There's no technological challenges coming over the horizon. It's all ready to go and smooth sailing going on. Your crystal ball, maybe, Brian, can you just give us a sense of what you're seeing in it, and the basis of what you built, given the fact that we do know it's a highly uncertain looking future?
So I think about it as, this is just the starting point for really what is the establishment and of the future of what I'll call market structure in financial services. And, I'm traditionally a market structure person, and market structure for decades has been built on asset class, geography, regulator. Like those are largely the 3 dimensions by which traditional financial services operates today. You'll still have a regulator in the future, but those other 2 facets will be completely democratized. And so
that's pretty radical, right? The lack of geographical constraints around
geographical boundaries will go away. The concept of I trade an asset, I trade a future here, and I trade an equity here, and I trade an option here, and I trade a swap with this person. And then I finance that activity in this other parallel pipe that happens completely separate from what I just described. That goes away. And think about the inefficiencies that exist today, and the amount of capital that's in the system that's bottled up as a function of those very structured pipelines that exist today for financial services. This is really the beginning, in my mind, of what the future will look like in terms of establishing that new market structure.
Yeah. So market structure becomes organic and dynamically evolving. Essentially, a market will develop for different market structure constructs.
Yes. Yeah, and I think it's sort of a best service, best product wins.
But the world thinks of you as, the classic securities, financial instruments, stocks, bonds, and the like, and that's what you do. And that is a narrative, right? That's a construct of a story. You're talking about everything being essentially opened up, and therefore, are we talking about native, blockchain tokens? Are we talking about tokenizing real estate and art and all these things all flowing through the same market structure? And just products. The entire economy.
I think that's exactly right. Because what's the difference hypothetically of a token of tokenized art versus a token that represents an equity
or as you keep on saying, I'm eating a banana.
Right, or a banana. That's exactly right. That was another good
bananas.
We fractionalize it down to a banana.
But I think honestly, the evolution will be through partnership. Is the way I envision it. This isn't a DTCC conquers the world type exercise. It's we know what we do, which is what we do securities in the United States incredibly well. We're going to start with that. I think a starting point of putting 100 trillion assets onto blockchain rails is probably a good starting point. But it is not going to materialize beyond that without through partnership. And so we're being very deliberate about including, being as inclusive as possible about the other actors that exist in the ecosystem and how we frankly enable, further development down the road.
Yeah,
All right, I'm going to use
can
my...
I jump in?
Yeah, you can. But...
So when we were talking about this before, when I think about how equity would be tokenized, I think maybe there's an NFT that represents one Apple share or NFTs that represent 100 shares. Maybe they're different denominations. Maybe those NFTs are containers that hold metadata. Maybe the metadata dictates how and where, maybe at what times potentially. This particular NFT can trade. It could potentially trade against a carton of bananas that has its own metadata, et cetera. So you don't necessarily need these individually rigorously structured venues for trading. So as we begin to flesh all of that out, does the DTCC essentially become a protocol that defines what these metadata structures are? And so maybe there are a few very smart people at the DTCC. Maybe it's mostly engineers, mechanism designers.
I like the future of where this is headed. I probably won't be working here, but thank you, Joe. I appreciate it.
You're a market structure guy. So
no, I'm kidding.
I'm
kidding. No, I think you're 100% right. That absolutely could move. That could move in that direction. I think that's. I think that could be a path for sure.
So I'm going to move to the elephant in the room, that I think you want to maybe address as well, and that's AI, right? So looking at where this world goes with these tokenized assets, with a fully digital programmable form of money and finance, where the metadata is able to communicate and trade with each other, that seems like that's just creating the framework for AI agents to operate. Where does it all land, Joe, for you? And what do you? I've got this specific interest, Advanced AI Society, where I wouldn't say we're worried, but we think it's extremely important that as the world barrels into this agentic AI future, that we are able to assure, and this is a trust question that's vital to all this, that enterprises and anybody that's deploying an AI has the capacity to trust it, that there is control rather than the AI itself having control. So where are you seeing all of this land in that regard? I know it's a very broad open question, but...
Yeah, so I can give a shot at the ultimate, where does this all land? But starting from where we are right now, we have a bunch of centralized organizations that are building foundational models using transformers and other technologies, and a bunch of organizations that are building mixtures of experts and user interfaces, and so I think we need to move a lot of that onto decentralized rails, or we might be in trouble. Big tech has done some incredible things for humanity and for the economy globally, but also I would argue that big tech, social media, is very polarizing and has done some very unhealthy things for the social fabric in the United States and other places, and so we need to figure out how to fix that. I do think AI has potentially a great role in that. Right now, our company Consensys, the Ethereum Foundation, other organizations that we're working with are building protocols to enable agents to pay one another, to enable agents to register themselves, register their capabilities, their reputation systems, so agents and humans and companies can provide feedback on how this agent actually performed in this particular context. And so a lot of mechanisms are getting built. I believe that we're in a very difficult period at the end of an 80-year super cycle that started with World War II. It's mostly a debt super cycle. There are other elements to it. But I think that the dominant technologies of the next the early phases of the next super cycle will be AI, will be decentralized protocols. Decentralized protocols will enable people and companies to have real agency in their lives in terms of financial, economic, social, political issues that they care about. And I believe that AI is going to enable people to level themselves up in real time on any topic. I'm going to be bonding with my digital twin AI agent, and it's going to be my tutor, my mentor. I'm going to teach it a lot of stuff. I'm going to feed it information. One thing that I will rely on, or that we will all rely on, is that our AI representatives will probably have one main controller. They will be able to represent us, ideally, in Web 2 and Web 3, and connect us to lots of different biological intelligences and machine intelligences. And I think we're going to be working in collectives going forward. And I think that they're going to help us get rid of the polarity and the fake news that drives us all crazy. And so if I can operate on the web and get information that I can trust because it is being assessed and cleaned up by my agent, then I'm going to be a healthy person.
That's a good, optimistic vision. I will say this.
And one more thing.
Okay, yeah.
People are concerned about artificial superintelligence and the singularity, the AI singularity. I think we're moving there very rapidly, and I think it's going to be a hybridization of machine and biological intelligence. So
right.
I think we are artificial superintelligence collectively.
All right, so there you go. You don't have to introduce any of that, Brian, because that was Joe's job, not yours. But I do want you to close on this, and I'm going to pick up a little bit on what Joe just said. He talked about the people and companies having agency, right? In fact, I'm going to use this is to be a shameless plug because we're putting on an event February 23rd that is actually in partnership with LF Decentralized Trust. And it's called the Summit on Human Agency. And we're really trying to get this point out that we need to have a base layer of human authority in the AI world, and that all these other trust infrastructures need to start with that. And I want to just throw to you, not to necessarily give me a take on how that fits into the AI world, but to reflect a little bit on the DTCC's role, right? Because if you are a trust infrastructure, in my mind, the reason why we have these systems, these institutions across the financial institution, is so that human beings, right, can have confidence in it, right? And without that, then you're not going to have a market, right? And so in some respects, what we're struggling with the AI world is like, okay, where's the human going to fit, and how's the human going to have trust in this brave new world that Joe's describing? So maybe just close us out here with a bit of thought on like, how do you think about that sort of deep obligation almost to the humans in the mix, be they the retail trader or the CEO of a big bank?
Particularly as it pertains to AI, or
I just think just generally as a kind of a responsibility of an institution like yours as you go into this innovation exercise.
I think it's a great. So as if trust in what we do fails, there's no sense in actually having DTCC. As an organization, we are critical to providing a level of trust to the ecosystem, and I think one of the reasons, as I said before, in terms of just kind of lowering the barriers towards engagement from a broader population of financial services in what we're doing, particularly as it pertains to tokenization, is based on trust. Firms feel comfortable to engage with us on the work that we're doing. Because we know that we have their best interest at mind, and we are not motivated by anything other than to provide a level of safety, resilience, soundness, and trust to the industry. And that's a unique, our ownership structure, our governance, all of it stems from building trust in the ecosystem. That doesn't exist in other institutions. Public, private, the commercial interest at heart. We're not driven and motivated by commercial interests. We're driven by what's good for the industry. And I think that's a very, very unique value proposition as you think about, is this entity really one that can be trusted?
All right, there you go. Good plug for the DTCC at the end there. A round of applause for Brian Steele and Joe Lubin.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.